Here it is the next day, and now that I've had some rest, I think I'll go through this a little more methodically. Those last few segments I recorded in the wee hours because I was really determined to get this CRT to light up before I went to bed. Okay, first up, here are those controls that I was guessing at. So, indeed, this is brightness, and this is the AGC control where I had to go fully clockwise to get a decent picture. So, I don't think I should need quite that much gain, but the station I was receiving has a pretty weak video carrier and a much stronger audio carrier, because it's really sort of a pseudo TV station, and it's really more of a radio station at the lower fringe of the FM band. And again, I haven't tested any of the tubes. Some of these IF tubes could be weak as well. And there might be some more out-of-spec resistors under there as well, or the alignment, of course, could be off. Let's see what else. Okay, focus, height, hold, linearity. Alright, so that's vertical hold, vertical linearity, and height. And let's focus. Okay. I'll try to keep that straight. Now, as far as why the picture looks so weird, it was kind of circular and out of focus. Partly because I can't get this pushed back very easily because I got this really heavy spring going around the high voltage cable. I guess I could try taking that nut off and loosen up this cable. See if I can get this pushed. Because you really need to get this up tight against the deflection yoke to get a proper picture on there. Now, the other problem was it being all out of focus. That's because of this thing. This is an auto-focusing CRT. Does not need this. In fact, this causes problems. This is the focus coil. Just a big old electromagnet. Now, I think I can disconnect this and get it out of the way. I can't take out the wires, though. It's part of the power supply, which is very often the case. It's like used as a filter choke, I believe. Let's see if we can find out a schematic here. Right there. So if I disconnected that, the 205 and 115, it would screw up this voltage divider. So I don't want to take it out of the circuit, but I think there's enough length on the wires that if I disconnect this, in fact, when I first got this chassis, or when this chassis was found after the copper scrappers were done with this actually was off, and it was kind of just hanging there. Amazingly, it was still there and is still good. So I want to try doing that right now, because that should make a marked improvement on the picture, and I'll see if I can get this straightened out. And then what I really want to do is go through the tubes. I've been tripped up a few times before, and guys have commented, why don't you touch the tubes before you turn the set on? Well, quite often when I find these sets, they weren't retired because a tube blew out. They were retired from service because the family got a newer TV, and they just put this away. Or there was other problems underneath, like as we saw, there were some burned out power resistors, and one of the filter caps looked very crusty, so it would probably go bad. In fact, if the filter capacitor going bad may very well have caused those power resistors to burn out. It was actually pretty easy to unmount that focus coil and get it out of the way, so now I just have the CRT and yoke. And disconnecting that little clamp helped a bit, but I still kind of, if I kind of push it up like that, I can get it firmly seated. So, let's give this a try.
The furthest ahead looking caller of the show.
Well, since you mentioned it, Cubs and Sox schedules were released today.
Yeah, I noticed there definitely is no horizontal hold on the front of the set. It's looking a lot better though. Oh, yeah. Alright.
same thing about the Bills yesterday. But the Cubs and White Sox play July 10th
Not bad,
and
not
then
bad.
August 14th through the 16th, so both weekends. And separated.
That's better.
That's going to be Air Show weekend?
What was the second dates again?
Adjusting the AGC control.
Air Show.
Alright, about there's not too bad.
There should be a Bears exhibition game that weekend, too. Oh, yeah.
Brightness down a little.
Starters, though, because they don't want to get hurt. All right, Dave. I don't know if I'm with you on that.
Obviously, we got some very visible retrace lines. May end up wanting to put a retrace suppression modification in there, so you can fine tuning a little bit.
Now they got to steal one from something else. Now they've got to win. If they can win one of these next two and come out of the first three, 1 and 2.
Brightness down a little bit. There's clearly there's some smearing on there.
That's the best I can give you.
Part of the reason, Ben, why it's frustrating to me is that they lost a game.
Oh, and it's actually wrapping around.
They'll have the same things they've
Like this should be the game, and it looks like the E is kind of wrapping around and getting smeared off to the right.
They're blaming the media for painting you in a bad light. They're not
Try adjusting the horizontal drive.
It just seems that the excuses are already built in their mindset. Yeah, that does not portend well.
You see the ratings for yesterday? Ed Sherman and the Trib had the ratings.
Okay, there we go. I had the drive cranked up all the way.
3, which is about 1.1 million viewers. That's about, I should say,
That's not bad. That's not bad at all. This is a really weak station. I'm just using a 3-foot long piece of wire for an antenna. At 5 feet, direct strong RF signal right into this should have a really nice picture.
Actually, I was mowing the lawn during halftime.
I'm not going to worry about the picture being full width or linearity or anything like that until I get the real CRT
They got blown out early. They were
in here,
during one timeout. They were losing like 20.
which currently is with the owner of the
Yeah, the Mercury had Brittany Griner.
the owner of this set.
They're gonna win by. They're gonna sweep. It's over. Everything sucks. So real quick,
let's just wrap it up here with Mark in Wicker Park. You're on the game, Mark. You're our last caller, so make it a good one.
I'm testing the tubes now, and I'm finding quite a few that are weak or have mild shorts. For example, here's a 6SN7, and check this out. It's flipping out my tester. Just tapped on the tube, made the shorts indicators go out, but quality's pretty bad. Now it's flipping out again, so that's got to go. So it's surprising how a TV can work with tubes that have all sorts of problems. Also, the original 6BG6 is dead. I kind of suspected that when I first brought this setup. It was glowing very feebly. So when I've shown this set operating, I had already actually replaced this. I never even tried running this set off of this tube. So a few more to test. I hope the 12AU7s are good, because those I'm getting a little short on. The rest of the tubes I have plenty of spares. But as experience has shown me, even after I replace all these weak tubes, probably won't see a huge difference in the performance, but I have to assume that the set will last a lot longer. In other words, if I left these tubes in there and ran the set hour after hour after hour, I think it would definitely start developing problems as these tubes completely died. Whereas with a fresh set of tubes, it should run for quite a while, I hope, without any problems. Well, unfortunately, it turns out that one of the 12AU7s is a bit weak. Well, this gives me an opportunity to try something I've been meaning to do for a while, which is substitute 12AU7 with one of these guys, which is a 5963. I got a bunch of these I've taken out of old Hewlett-Packard test equipment, frequency counters in particular, I think. What these are is 12AU7s that were spec'd a little bit differently for computer use. These are designed to operate in a cutoff region for extended periods of time, but that means the grid being very negative so that there's no plate current flowing. Also, these have a max plate voltage that's a little bit lower. I think only 250 volts versus 300 for the 12AU7, but otherwise it seems like they are a pretty would substitute. And these are not going into something like a sensitive audio preamp, because I've also read that these can be a little noisy, but these are, in this set, these are used for AGC amplifier and I think it's vertical multi-vibrator, so not something that would be affected by limitations, I think. So let's see how it tests. It definitely tests better than the other one with the same settings. 2-section tube, so I'm testing both sides. And yeah, so I'm going to give this a try. Just going to want to double check that the plate voltage is not exceeding the specs on this tube. Can also try using a 5814, which I think it might be a ruggedized version of the 12AU7. I think I got a few of those as well, but I definitely have a whole bunch of these, so gotta give that a try. Well, I put all the tubes in, and the set was playing fine. I was making some adjustments, and I saw a little arc, little flash, and heard a pop down in there, and now I have no high voltage. So, gotta go investigating. I really hope it's not the flyback. It looked like the spark was more like somewhere around the high voltage rectifier area. I'm hoping something just arced over here and maybe the fuse blew, and the flyback itself is just fine. Okay, so what might have happened? Well, I thought I saw the spark in this area, and I was thinking maybe the high voltage lead shorted against this yoke wire. Remember, this is a wire that the service info said not to run on this side of the tube because then it might arc. So I ran it like they said and pushed it on the other side. But I guess it could be pushed down lower to keep it further away from the high voltage lead. And I could replace this whole wire as well with something with maybe better insulation on it. But I also got mentioned this on Video Karma. I got a suggestion that maybe this damper tube has developed a heater cathode short, so I can check that out. Or maybe it arced inside. And there is a superior type to the 6W4. I think it's the 6AX4. Has better specs. Does a little bit more filament current, but this is a beefy transformer. I could probably handle that, so I can try that. And also, perhaps this cap has developed a problem. See, it snakes all over the place. So it runs from here. There's a wire running all the way back over to that grounding post. Which is a little odd. I don't know why they would have. This is just going to the chassis. Why have it go so far? Why not just have it go to the chassis closer by? Not sure what the rating or the value of that is. It says N750, and then I'm not sure. 30 picofarad. I can look up C82 in the parts list and see what the voltage rating might be on that guy. Okay, it's a 6,000 volt cap. Fixed trimmer. Well, it's not a trimmer, that's for sure. Air production has C2 connect from the plate of 6 BG6 and chassis to increase width. No, I don't have that. At any rate, I don't know if I have a 6,000 volt 30 picofarad cap on hand, so I'll do the easiest thing first. I'll test this tube, and I'll try replacing it regardless with the better spec later replacement. I'm going to push this wire down and away and see if I can get the high voltage back, and I'm going to run the set with this side facing me and observe this and let the set run for a while and see if I notice any problems. I tested the 6W4 and it tested fine, no heater cathode short, but went ahead and replaced it with a new old stock 6AX4. Anyways, I got a bunch on hand. Tested the 1B3, it's okay, so I left it in. I dressed that wire back there so it's further away from everything. And I replaced the fuse. So, let's try another power-up test. Alright, cool. I've got a picture back. Alright, so and now I'll let it run for a while. I think when it popped, I was messing around with this, which is the drive control. Now what I really need to do is test some voltages, make sure that's okay, and then go through the procedure in the service manual of how to adjust this stuff. And at some point I have to put the full-size picture tube in here to make sure the width is right. Because right now the width is pretty squished, and actually the full-size picture tubes would be much wider, and this seems to have a dramatic impact on the width. And there's also a control here, which is linearity. There doesn't seem to be an explicit width control. Usually there's a drive, a width, and linearity, so I'm not sure how you're supposed to adjust the width on this other than just tweaking the drive control. So I'll have to read up on that stuff. In the meantime, I'll let this run for a while and monitor the situation. Ran for about 5 minutes with no trouble, and then I decided to check the high voltage, because I noticed when I turned the brightness up all the way, the picture would bloom a little bit and fade. And I only got about 6,500 volts. I think this should be about 12,000, because this is a 16-inch picture tube. A lot of the sets I work on are only 10-inch, and those run on about 9,000, but this guy runs on a bit more. I don't know if they spec it on here. No, it doesn't appear to be. Anyways, I know 6,500 is too low. So I tried tweaking the drive control, and once again the fuse blew. So I think there's something not quite right in here, so I'm just going to start going through the components. I'll check the resistance on this drive control and associated components, and so on. But I feel better now that the flyback appears to be okay, and there's, I think, something else wrong in this area. Alright, I did a bit of tinkering and things seem to be working better now. Changed a bunch of things, so I can't point to one item in particular and say that this was the cause of it. Well, here's what I did. Swapped out the horizontal output tube. The one I had in there was testing just a shade into green, whereas this one is a new old stock Philco. Another thing I did was I took out the horizontal drive control. Should be 1 meg. This was measuring about 800K. But my bigger concern was potential of tin whiskers. It says plating on the outside of the control. That's tin. And over time that can migrate and crystallize and form little tendrils. This is supposed to be negative voltage. And it's mounted to the chassis, and if one of those tendrils was to short out in here, that could have been causing my problem, because every time the fuse blew was when I was tweaking this control. You see that this controls the signal with the horizontal output tube. I'm looking at the grid of the horizontal output tube right now. I also swapped out the resistor that attaches directly to that control. So there's the drive control. There's a 47K resistor attached to it. That had drifted up to about 65K. Also tested at 680 microfarad, 680 picofarad mega-cap. Tested fine, so I left it in there. And I've had it running about 15 minutes now. I've been adjusting the horizontal drive control, and no fuse popping. And I have a raster. The last thing I want to do is flip this down and check the actual high voltage level. It's supposed to be between about 11 and 13,000 volts. Oh, and I should mention that the original service info has waveforms and voltages, so I've been comparing these to my set. For example, cathode of horizontal output. It's hard to read here, but the scanned photo on my computer is more legible. It should be 17 volts, and that's about what I've got. It varies with the drive control. I can definitely get it right there, 17, more or less. And the waveform looks correct. So the voltage on the cathode is directly proportional to the current flowing through that cathode, assuming the resistors are right, and I have double checked them, so I think the cathode current is alright. Okay, let's see what kind of high voltage we've got. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. A fuse popping, but high voltage is still a bit low. Adjusting the drive control now. It drops off. Looks like a little over 8. It's the best I can eke out, or 8 1/3. Again, it should be, one service sheet says 11.5, another says 12. That would probably produce a watchable image, but certainly wouldn't be as bright as it could be, and it'd probably be a little blooming. Alright, so, well, I'll try a simple thing first, which is swap out the high voltage rectifier. And I could try another horizontal output tube, and well, we'll go from there. So I've tried all the easy things. Double checking my wiring, double checking components, swapping out tubes. Cannot get the high voltage up any higher than it is, but everything else seems to be working fine. So I think the problem really is isolated to just this area. So what does that leave me with? Well, the flyback seems a likely culprit. Unfortunately, I do not have any replacements. I believe a Fly 2 from Thord Arson would be an appropriate replacement. I don't have any on hand, and I took a quick look online and didn't see any for sale anywhere. But I could ask around, somebody might have one. Or, of course, there's the yoke. I believe this is fairly compatible. I mean, the picture is linear and rectangle, so it can't be totally incompatible, but the yoke is in series with the flyback, and if it's doesn't jive right with the circuitry, it certainly could reduce the high voltage. So I think I can dig around and come up with another one. Probably they're in my storage locker, so I gotta go hunting for another yoke. So in the meantime, I'm going to close out this video, and if you have any thoughts, please leave a comment.